So another assertion is an engine found away from the main debris shows that Flight 93 must have been hit by a missile. There's a link underneath there for you to peruse in your own time. I won't talk about it, but I would draw your attention to another story, another assertion, which is that debris from Flight 93 was found 6.1 miles away at a place called Indian Lake. And this is often put forward as evidence that Flight 93 was taken down by a missile, which is kind of the most popular of the conspiracy theories. Some people say there was no plane, but that's, the more popular one is that it was shot down. This issue of the 6.1 miles in the debris field is interesting, because if you go to Google Maps, and I know this because I'm a Google Map nerd, if you go to Google Maps and you put in the crash location of Flight 93, and then put in the location of Indian Lake, and ask Google to calculate the difference between, it will tell you it's 6.1 miles. And that's where this 6.1 miles figures come from. Sounds very convincing. Google Maps can't be wrong. Well, it can, because that's 6.1 miles in a car. A car doesn't drive in a straight line. It goes in loops and bends. In actual fact, as the crow flies, or as the plane flies, or as the wind blows, it's 1.5 miles from the crash site to Indian Lake. So it is conceivable with wind and other factors that debris, light debris, such as pieces of paper and maybe some clothing or pieces of seats, could have blown 1.5 miles to Indian Lake. So we're starting to see this process of assertion and then debunking by the debunkers. The Pentagon. What do we talk about the Pentagon? There was no record to identify what was coming from the 757. There's a large amounts of what appear to be quite convincing photographic evidence of livery from the side of an American Airlines plane. Another question is, where were the passengers' luggage and personal effects? None were recovered. In actual fact, it does seem that some personal effects may have been recovered, and again, there's links there for you to rummage around it and explore. But let's talk about the big one, WTC-7, World Trade Center 7. World Trade Center 7 is being described by some of the conspiracy theorists as the smoking gun of 9/11. The crime scene, as it were, that definitively proves that there was a conspiracy that day. So what was World Trade Center 7? Most people think about the Twin Towers in 9/11. In actual fact, there were 3 towers came down that day, and the 9/11 truth guys would like you to talk about the 3rd tower a little bit more. World Trade Center 7, I've actually just gone, I want to go back one, excuse me. This is World Trade Center 7. Apologies for the fuzzy image. The cloud of dust behind us, obviously the north and south towers just after they shortly come down. The first tower came down at 9:59 a.m., the second tower came down at 10:28 a.m., and then at around about 5:30 in the evening, World Trade Center 7 came down, around, a good few hours afterwards. If you forgive me, I've lost my path here. World Trade Center 7 was 47 stories tall. It was built in 1983. It was built after the original Twin Towers. It was 610 feet tall, and it was hit by the falling North Tower. We know that because there's video footage of the North Tower slamming into the side of the south face of WTC-7. Now, the conspiracy theorists, some of them are suggesting that World Trade Center 7 is interesting because it was home to, amongst many other organizations, in its 47 stories, the Secret Service, the CIA, numerous, big financial companies, and the Office of Emergency Management. In other words, the very location where, should there be an apocalyptic event in New York, that event would be managed from there. Pretty shortly after the tower started coming down, WTC-7 was evacuated. And then it comes down about 5:30 in the evening. And the assertion is this was a controlled demolition, that the building was blown up. One, because the footage, when you look at it, really does look like a controlled demolition when you first look at it. And secondly, because of a quote that's given to a guy called Silverstein, who owned the World Trade Center. Silverstein is accused by some people of being the guy that actually organized the 9/11 attacks because he wanted the insurance, because he took out an insurance policy on the World Trade Center. The fact is, he wouldn't have been able to really buy the World Trade Center without taking out an insurance policy which included terrorism, because the World Trade Center had been bombed in 1993 by Al-Qaeda. So, that's the conspiracy theory and the debunk. So, the assertion is footage of the WTC-7 collapse shows clear signs of demolition squibs. A demolition squib is an explosive device used to take down a building. And this assertion comes from, as you watch the building come down, you can see windows exploding out, as though it looks like there's explosives. I'll leave it up to you to decide. But let's talk about a guy called Barry Jennings. Barry Jennings is at the center of the WTC7 conspiracy theories because he was an emergency coordinator for the New York Housing Authority. And when the building was evacuated, something went wrong where he was in the lower depths of the building. He didn't know what was going on. He arrives back up to the 23rd floor. The place is empty, the smoke, steaming coffee still in the chairs. He picks the phone up, calls his boss, says, what the hell's going on? They say, get out of the building right now. So he's basically one of the last people left inside World Trade Center 7. So he's a key eyewitness that can confirm or refute these conspiracy theory assertions. So like I said, he was inside WTC7 after the building was evacuated. One of the only eyewitnesses to what happened. He died in August 2008, age 53, giving birth to a whole new slew of conspiracy theories that he was murdered or bumped off, to keep him quiet. And there are two central assertions about Barry Jennings from the conspiracy theories. The first of which is that he witnessed explosions inside the building. And the second one is that he witnessed dead bodies inside WTC7. Let's talk about the explosions first. The debunkers or the rebuttalists would say that the use of the word explosion doesn't necessarily indicate the use of a bomb. There are different types of explosions. There's combustion explosions, deflagration explosions, violent expulsion of gas from a compressed space, and that anything sufficiently loud noise in that environment could be called or described an explosion. But then onto the really key issue with the dead bodies issue inside WTC7. The official story says the building was evacuated, and the conspiracy theory says, well no, we think people might have been killed in that building. So what about what Barry Jennings himself has to say?
This is the Alex Jones Show on News Radio 590 KLDK. Boom, there's a huge explosion. There's dead people all over the lobby, and the cops are saying, don't look at it, because remember they say nobody died. But folks, we have them. This is so huge.
Every word used by eyewitnesses is picked over in a relentless search for a hidden truth. Conspiracy talk shows and websites seized on an interview for loose change with a crucial witness, Barry Jennings. There's no evidence that anyone died in Tower 7 on 9/11. But did Barry's interview suggest something else?
The amount of detail that Barry gave us in this interview is unreal. He says he was stepping over dead bodies in the lobby.
Trouble is, Barry Jennings himself disagrees with their interpretation of his words.
I didn't like the way, I was portrayed. They portrayed me as seeing dead bodies. I never saw dead bodies.
But Dylan Avery has a recording of his interview, and he's unrepentant.
And the firefighter that took us down kept saying, do not look down. And I kept saying, why? I said, do not look down. And we're stepping over people. And you can feel when you're stepping over people. That's how
I didn't take anything out of context.
I said it felt like I was stepping over them, but I never saw them. And, that's the way they portrayed me, and I didn't appreciate that, so I told them to pull my interview. Do I think that our government would do something like that to its people? No. I honestly don't believe that.
Okay, so what we've got here is a process I want to draw your attention to. Earlier on talked about, how do these people make authenticity? How do they construct the truth for themselves? And to me, it's a three-step process. There's the blather, there were dead bodies. That's the assertion by the conspiracy theorists. Then there's the rinse. No, that's not what I said. I was stepping over people. And then there's the repeat. It doesn't matter what he says now. It's what he said at the time that's important. And this, to me, just seems slightly strange. We've got this process whereby a person is quoted, or a quote is attributed to them. The person says, that's not what I said, that's not what I meant, or it was a state of intense panic and trauma, and you're misquoting me. And then the conspiracy theorist says, I don't care what you say now, it's what you said at the time that's relevant. As though human beings don't have the right to clarify what they originally said on a day of intense panic and trauma.